Very soon there will be a grand tournament UFC 294, which will be held in Abu Dhabi. The main event of this tournament will be a rematch between champion Ислам Makhachev and Charles Oliveira. Hello friends, with you World of MMA channel. In today's video we will find out whether Oliveira will be able to avenge that defeat, or will Ислам win again confidently? But before the video, don't forget to support the channel by donating. It will help promote the channel. Here we go. The 31-year-old Dagestani is at his peak. Now Makhachev has a streak of 12 wins in a row in the world's premier promotion and the third place in the ratings regardless of the category. Islam's career began in 2010 and he followed his older brother's path, Pro FC M1. But in contrast to Nurmagomedov, Makhachev had 11 victories, enough to be invited to the UFC. Khabib had 5 more. With an 11-0 record in May 2015, Islam made a bright debut. He choked Leo Kuhns in the middle of the second round and, as an undefeated fighter, received his next opponent. It was Brazilian Adriano Martins with a 28-7 record and a controversial win over Rustam Khabilov in his previous fight. Makhachev started confidently, pushing Martins and working at number 1. However, not even 2 minutes later, Adriano failed his opponent in one of his attacks, and with a clean right side punch inflicted his first defeat on Islam, also by knockout. Surprisingly, the Brazilian has not won again since then and has long since left the elite promotion. The Dagestanian took a break for a year, but there was also a story about meldonium, which annoyed the whole Russian sport. The return in September 2016 marked the beginning of the 12-fight winning streak that Makhachev now has under his belt. Among the defeated fighters, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tibau, Davy Ramos and Arman Tsarukyan. But Islam lacked flashy finishes, and in 2021 he began to show them. In March, he strangled Drew Dober. In the summer he led the tournament for the first time, also finishing Thiago Moises. And at the end of October, getting the most status opponent at the time, Dan Hooker. Makhachev simply decimated the New Zealander. At the end of February last year, Islam and Beneil Dariush had to decide who would be the next title challenger, but the Assyrian got injured, and instead he was challenged by a tough Bobby Green. It took the Russian fighter just under 3.5 minutes to secure another finish, his 4th in a row. Dana White couldn't ignore Islam any longer, and Makhachev got his long-awaited title shot. On the eve of UFC 280, Dagestani's haters and ardent Oliveira fans believed in Charles's chances, but the Russian fighter cleanly demolished the Brazilian and mockingly strangled the promotion's record holder by submissions. Islam then faced number 1 pound Alexander Volkanovski and won by unanimous decision of the judges. Charles Oliveira holds the organization record for the most bonuses per performance of the night with 12, the most wins by receptions with 16, and the most early wins with 20. Before the loss to Ислам Makhachev, he was on a streak of 11 wins, 10 of which were early victories. As it often happens with the Brazilians, he comes from jiu-jitsu, although it is not difficult to guess about it from his records, which we have already mentioned. Oliveira started his MMA career at the age of 18, and by 20, after getting the 12-0 record, he was invited by the UFC. Charles got off to a strong start, 2 early wins with bonuses. And the extra award was a fight against Jim Miller. Now he's a veteran. But then he was going to the UFC with 7-1 record and his only loss was to Sirius Gray Maynard, and that by decision. The young Brazilian did not pass such a test, losing in the first round. Oliveira then lost to Cerrone and moved up to featherweight division. There he repeated his debut history, 2 wins, then a loss to Swanson. The Brazilian was written off by many, but after losing also to Edgar, he came up with 4 wins and lost again. In his fight against the rising Max Holloway, Charles got injured and thought he would be crippled. But it wasn't just losses that worried the organization's bosses. In the featherweight division, Oliveira regularly failed to weigh in. In April 2017, he was forced to return to a higher category. Traditionally, he started with a win, but then lost to Felder. After bouncing back, the Brazilian began to fight lesser-known opponents and, with 6 wins, topped the tournament for the first time, as it turned out later the last before a long pause due to the coronavirus pandemic. By smothering Kevin Lee, Oliveira ended up on the 7th line and has a chance to break into the top division if he wins. His opponent was Tony Ferguson, who lost to Gaethje and broke his 12-win streak. The Brazilian easily defeated the veteran and earned the right to challenge the vacant UFC lightweight title left by Khabib Nurmagomedov. In the first round, the American had a chance to win, but in the second round, Charles knocked out his opponent, and 28 fights later became the champion of the elite promotion. Many people, looking at the list of opponents and the level of Dustin Poirier, thought that Oliveira would lose the belt in his first defense. But it took little more than 2 rounds for the Brazilian to finish the American and win another bonus. And then there was the fight in May 2022, when the Brazilian botched the weigh-in, but finished Justin Gaethje in 3.5 minutes. Then last October he lost to Ислам Makhachev by second-round choke. 8 months later, however, he returned to the octagon and defeated Beneil Dariush by TKO in the first round. Let's start with Ислам Makhachev. First, leg kicks. Makhachev often uses high and low leg kicks to control distance and attack his opponent. For example, he may use a high front leg kick, front kick, to attack the opponent's head or a low planche to kick to the legs, making his attacks less predictable. Second, hand strikes. Makhachev is also a virtuoso in the technique of hand strikes. His combinations can include quick and accurate punches, such as a left hook and a right uppercut, which can throw an opponent off balance. Third, counterattacks. Ислам Makhachev knows how to use counterattacks effectively. For example, he can dodge an opponent's attack and immediately respond with a precise counter movement and punch, which allows him to neutralize his opponent's attacks and do damage. Fourth, adaptation to the opponent's style. Makhachev also studies the style of his opponents and adapts to them. For example, if his opponent relies heavily on leg kicks, Makhachev may focus on blocking or dodging those kicks to minimize the risk of damage. Fifth, distance work. An important part of Makhachev's striking technique is distance work. He can control the distance with his punches and movement, which allows him to dictate the pace of the fight and control the flow of the fight. Now let's move on to the Brazilian Oliveira. First, variety of punches. Oliveira can utilize a wide variety of punches, including arm and leg kicks. His arsenal includes jabs, hooks, uppercuts, and low leg kicks, making his attacks unexpected and hard for opponents to predict. Second, combinatorics. Charles Oliveira is great at working combinations. He can launch a series of punches, including combinations of arm and leg kicks, which allows him to create pressure on his opponent. Third, mid-east combat. Oliveira has also shown himself to be a close-range fighter. He can use his elbows and knees to attack at close range and is also adept at wrestling. Fourth, punch resistance technique. Oliveira has good punch resistance technique. He can dodge attacks, block punches, and counterattack neatly. Fifth, intuition and reaction. His ability to sense the moment and react to his opponent's actions makes his striking technique more effective. He can react instantly to certain situations in a fight. I think in this aspect Ислам Makhachev will be a slight favorite. Let's break down Ислам Makhachev's wrestling, paying attention to specific factors. First, wrestling skills. Ислам Makhachev has outstanding wrestling skills. This includes the ability to perform a variety of throws, takedowns, and control. His wrestling abilities make him a fighter capable of controlling ground position and utilizing effective techniques. Second, integration in fighting tactics. It's important to note that Makhachev doesn't just have skills in wrestling, but integrates them into his overall fight tactics. He skillfully switches between striking and wrestling, choosing his moments to utilize his wrestling skills. This makes his fights unexpected and difficult for his opponents. Third, control on the ground. Makhachev is excellent at controlling opponents on the ground. He can maintain position from the top, thwarting attempts to regain position from his opponent, and throwing punches, which earns him extra points. Fourth, switch skill. Another key factor in Makhachev's wrestling is his ability to switch between wrestling and stand-up in an instant. This puts extra pressure on opponents, as it is difficult for them to predict exactly what to expect from Makhachev. Now let's take a look at Oliveira's wrestling skills. First, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oliveira is known for his outstanding skills in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This style of fighting on the ground gives him a competitive edge, allowing him to dominate positions on the ground and utilize a variety of showering grabs and choke holds. Second, support from spin. Oliveira specializes in taking his opponent's back. He skillfully transitions into this position and uses it to control and choke. His ability to hold his opponent's back makes him a fighter who can quickly end fights with choke holds. Third, ability to get out of the toughest situations. Oliveira has a unique ability to get out of difficult situations on the ground. Even when he finds himself at a disadvantage, he can use his technical skills and knowledge of jiu-jitsu to turn the tide of the fight in his favor. Fourth, style development. Charles Oliveira is constantly developing his fighting style. He works on technique, learns new moves, and adapts to different opponents. This makes him a fighter who does not stand still and is always ready for new challenges. I think Ислам Makhachev will be the favorite here as well. I think that Ислам Makhachev is going to win this fight by decision of the judges. What do you think, friends? Write your opinions in the comments. Bye, everybody.